Welcome to Non-Beta Alpha, your source for unique insights with host Ryan Morfin, CEO of Wentworth Management Services. Today we're discussing regulatory compliance with our guest Thomas Giacchetti, author, nationally renowned attorney, and chairman of the investment management and securities practice of Stark & Stark.
Tom, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Ryan, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Well, whenever I talk about compliance, I always take out my religious candle and light it. And, I think in this environment, financial advisors would be smart to do the same. Could you talk to us a little bit about, the compliance environment that we're all in and what's changing with the new administration and what we should be aware of as people who are giving advice, acting as fiduciaries, managing money? What keeps you up at night that should be keeping us up at night?
Well, first, I commend you for your religious candles. I think they help. I also, too, went to a Catholic school. Even through college, I went through to the Jesuits, and I went to grade school at the Sisters of Perpetual Agony, and they really set me straight early on in my life. So our new president and our new SEC commissioner, things will not get any easier. That I can promise us. I always say this, I've been doing this now longer than probably anybody in the business. But every year I say it gets to be a more and more aggressive regulatory environment. I think the new commissioner will prove that. This is a regulatory environment where the SEC and state regulators don't like the investment business, don't trust the investment business, looking to implement more and more regulations. Not realizing, and when I've had the SEC and regulators in my audience, I always chide them that, you can't regulate bad people. Bad people are always going to be bad people. But what you do is you confound and frustrate the overwhelming majority of good investment professionals throughout the country. And they continue to do that because at heart, they're politicians. And politicians only care about the surface and not really what works underneath. And at the end of the day, it doesn't help anybody at all. And it frustrates the attempts of the good people in the investment profession.
No, that's a great point. And I think, hopefully there's a regulator or two watching the show. But, what can advisors do to stand out? How would you take it? Is it a PR strategy with the regulators? How do you advise your clients on how to self-identify and act like one of the good guys?
Well, here's what I do. And here's what I've been doing since the late 80s, Ryan. I was one of the original people in this business, helping advisors throughout the country as the industry grew. All I really care about, if they're regulators, they know who I am and they know I speak the truth. All I care about is getting through an SEC examination, a regulatory examination. Other than that, it's all nonsense. And what I've been doing for 35 years is traveling around the country 4 days a week, 48 to 49 weeks a year, not as much during COVID, but sitting down with firms and showing them how to get through an exam. If you are hiring consultants who are doing things for you, or you are allowing others to supplant your responsibilities for compliance, you will not get through an exam. I will show firms how to do it, and we will find those issues that the SEC is looking at to make sure you're ready to mitigate and/or to respond.
And what can we expect from the SEC in terms of new priorities, FINRA, new priorities as it relates to the new, leadership that's coming in? There's a lot of interesting, discussions about, what Rudy Giuliani called the no broken window policy, which I think if people don't know what that means, Giuliani basically said, we'll make sure we find landlords so there's no broken windows. And that type of uber compliance forced everyone to step their game up in New York. And it seems that that's going to be the environment that we're walking into. Where do you think they start in terms of I don't want to call it nitpicking, but in terms of the smaller infractions that they're going to be hyper-focused on?
Well, Ryan, I wrote about this. I've been I've been an industry commentator in the industry magazine, Investment Advisor magazine, for about 20 years. I've had the column. And I wrote about this about a year and a half ago, and I think I upset some people. But I said the regulators are getting so aggressive, you would think that they had an economic incentive to find things. All right. Most will not leave your office unless they can find a way for you to pay some money back to clients. And that's what we really need to look at. Did we disclose all conflicts? Have we looked at our fees and how we bill and whether or not there's a conflict relative to our fees? Have we clearly and unambiguously advised the client as to how fees are calculated? And have we made any mistakes? Because mistakes will be construed against the advisor every time. So these are the things I look at. What I tell firms is the SEC has evolved. They understand that there's no such thing now as best execution for mutual funds. They figure out that Johnny and Judy are most likely reporting their personal securities transactions. They're getting into the weeds. And what I want to do is get into the weeds with them to make sure that after the regulators leave, and again, most of the regulators are really good people, but after they leave, okay, they may find X or Y. They may tell you that this is a best practice, which I don't understand what a best practice is. But at the end of the day, I don't want any harm done to my clients. So we'll make sure that they are ready, okay, to address the issues that could come back and cost them financially in a very dear manner, okay, and or a potential regulatory enforcement proceeding.
Cybersecurity is becoming a big trending topic in our space, but have there been any enforcement actions based off of cybersecurity, or is it too early to tell, or does everything get swept under the rug? No one likes to talk about it.
There have been a few where the firm has totally disregarded cybersecurity and has had no way of ascertaining if there was a breach or a violation of its information systems. I can tell you the SEC in New York just recently started doing sweeps, and two of my larger institutional clients were examined. They did very well. Generally, you're not going to see regulatory actions come from them. They're more of an exploratory review from the SEC to see what firms are doing. How are they devising policies? How are they testing their processes? Are they doing pen testing, vulnerability analysis? How are they protecting the integrity of the information that they are entrusted with? Because remember, at the end of the day, we're stewards of our clients' information. And so I there's a lot of things I say to the SEC, you're totally wasting your time. And if I was king, and I thought about that for some time, if I was the SEC commissioner, the things I would absolutely stop doing. But the cybersecurity, the cyber information, this is critical. This is critical not only from a regulatory standpoint. The SEC got hacked itself. It's critical from a brand standpoint, right? It's critical for a firm to protect its brand and its business because clients will stay with you generally during up and down markets. But if they ever think you're not a good steward of their information, they're out of here. And that information will travel.
No, absolutely. And I think a lot of advisors don't realize that they really are critical infrastructure. They're part of the financial, services sector, and it is designated by DHS as part of critical infrastructure. And oftentimes, the financial advisor may be the weak link, right, with phishing attempts or clicking on links. And it happens to all organizations. There's attempts, especially if they manage large amounts of money. What, in your opinion, should an advisor do if they feel like they have lost control of their network or somebody has hijacked their email? Like, what is your advice to an office that is going through that?
Okay. Once that has happened, let's talk about how do they ascertain that? Okay, you need to have. When I lecture, I used to lecture in person 30, 40 times a year throughout the country at large meetings. More often now, it's like this remotely. But I would often say, do you have a car without an engine? And they would look at me. I would ask them to raise their hand. How many had a cyber program? Oh, we have one. How many of you have an outside or internal, and internal is very few, consultant who's monitoring your systems 24/7? Because if you don't have someone who's monitoring to inform you immediately that there's a breach, okay, how are you going to mitigate that breach? Okay. The second thing is you need to have cyber insurance. Look, I'm a big believer in E&O, but cyber coverage is critical, not because clients will be damaged generally. It's the expensive, the expensive exercise you have to go through with hiring IT forensic people, forensic IT professionals, and lawyers to determine the state law in every state in which you have clients as to what notice provisions must be given. So, these are things, Ryan, I've been doing for years, sitting down with firms. Again, there's only one way to protect a firm. It's to look at them in the eye, understand what they do. There's no bang a square through a round hole. There's no check the box. There's no list. There's talk to me. Let me help you. If I do it right once, you're fine.
And cyber insurance is becoming a trending topic in fintech and in the insurance industry. What do you look for when you're advising clients in a good carrier or a good policy? What are some of the details? Because a lot of people don't have cyber insurance. They don't realize why they need it and why it's so important.
I can tell you, as part of what I do for firms, I look at their E&O policy. And I always go to the exclusions. Okay, what's included and what's excluded? Generally, the exclusions are about a dozen pages. All right. Do I have the coverage I need, whether it's my regular E&O or it's my cyber? And on the cyber, what I most care about is the cost of the forensic and the lawyers. I need to have those. Those are the immediate issues, because we're going to go to our cyber carrier and say, look, we got a problem. Time is of the essence. Hire or get for us, or tell us we can hire the forensic people and the lawyers necessary to do what we have to do at this point.
No, there's a reason the insurance companies own Class A office buildings in every major city. It's because of the exclusions page. So one question for you is, so, Reg BI came out, and if people watching the show don't know what that means, if you could explain it. And then maybe, given the new administration, do you foresee the DOL coming back with a fiduciary rule, given the posturing that the SEC's taken in the last few years?
Well, BI, best interest exemption. Again, most financial professionals adhere to that, but we got brushed with the same broad stroke that happens all the time when we have regulation. BI is here to stay. All right, the DOL, the SEC, and the DOL just came out with a new PTE, and we need just to make sure that we're following a best interest test. What we're doing is always in the best interest of the client. All right, whether we're a fiduciary or not is a different story. All righty, but what we must do is in the best interest. As to investment advisors, I've had DOL rollover language on my ADVs for years prior to the initial DOL rule, which was the worst written rule I've ever read in my entire life, the original one. But we're fiduciaries, and if you're an investment fiduciary, okay, you have an obligation at the time a client comes to you and you recommend a rollover to determine whether that rollover is in the client's best interest. Period. And that's never changed. So we just came out with an alert on the new DOL PTE, and if any of your viewers want to be on my mailing list as to the alerts, they can always email me, and I'll put them on the mailing list. We publish those types of alerts on a regular basis.
And so the PTE, it's a prohibited transaction exemption. If you can go into a little bit about why you felt they put that out now, and is this the beginning of a lot more guidance from DOL, or do you think this rounds out the conversation?
Ryan, I think it's politics. I think the fact that the Trump administration pretty much quashed the old DOL rule, and we now have a new administration, and there were people who were very upset that the DOL rule was quashed. I think that it is a political reaction. Will it really change the landscape? I'm not so sure. I'm really not. Bad guys are always going to be bad guys. RIAs will always be fiduciaries. Whether there'll be a fiduciary rule or not, I'm not so sure. But I can tell you, the sad thing is, what regulators and politicians don't get is that mom and pop, when they're sitting in front of you, won't know whether you're a fiduciary or not a fiduciary, won't know about those things because the disclosures are way too complex for them to understand. All they really care about, and all the regulators should care about, is, did you listen to me? And did you do what was best for me at the time?
Well, you bring up a comment about fiduciaries, and it strikes me that better or worse, the regulators maybe don't have enough budget to watch over the mass influx of RIAs that are fee only. And the question for you is, do you see bad actors leaving the FINRA oversight and wolves in sheep clothing, becoming fiduciaries, and hiding underneath the underbrush of the RA movement? Do you worry about that?
Well, I think you're going to have bad actors in both places, on the FINRA side, on the SEC RIA side. And the budgetary constraints in Washington, I can tell you they've hired some really good people. There are some great examiners, smart people. I'm not a fan of the leadership per se, because the leadership is political, all right? And I've often said I'd like to be SEC commissioner. I could straighten it out in 6 months, because this is not hard. The problem we have with the SEC is, okay, they spend way too much time on nonsense, going into firms' offices and being aggressive with regard to mutual fund asset allocators, okay, and they don't spend the time with the firms that have actual physical custody, okay, or engaging in other types of services that could come back and cause great havoc to investors. When's the last time you saw a newsflash? Newsflash, SEC gets bad guys before they steal all the money. They miss it. They'll always miss it because they're politicians.
Well, that's an interesting concept. And I mean, the regulators are there to protect investors and keep the capital markets clean and safe. How much more resources do you think they need to do their job consistently, holistically, and enforce all the rules that are on the books? Do you think they're shortchanged by the politicians? And what would you do, or what would you advocate if you were, commissioner for the day or head of the Senate Finance Committee? Like, what do they need in terms of tools to make American capital markets safe?
Ryan, I don't think it's a budgetary issue. What I think is it is a review of what their priorities are. And I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of these examinations really don't bring any regulatory protection to the investing public. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be examinations, but they shouldn't be as long as they are. There's only a few things government should be figuring out. Is the money where it's supposed to be, right? Have I billed my clients fairly, consistent with the schedule, and have I breached my fiduciary duty? And am I maintaining the integrity of the client's financial information? Other than that, okay, they shouldn't be determining whether I'm a good advisor or a bad advisor, whether I make good investments or bad. Okay, that's not their purview. And if they did that and spent more time on trying to figure out where the bad actors are and stopping them, we'd all be in a much better place.
Going back to the fiduciary business model versus the commission business model, when does it make sense for an account to be fee only, and when does it make sense for an account to be a commissionable trading account?
I can tell you that, and I represent many of the industry organizations on both sides of the fee only people. I don't think that's the true test. I think the test is, who is the client? Because I can tell you many fee-only firms will not take smaller clients, right? They're not going to take someone with $10,000 or $20,000, all right? So if that's the case, where does mom and pop go? They go to a commission person. And all I care about from the commission salesperson and their oversight is, did you listen and did you do what was in my best interest? So in that situation, I don't see pros and cons. Obviously, if you have substantial net worth and you're looking for someone to review and monitor your assets on an ongoing, continuous basis, there's a consensus that the fee-only process is more advantageous, but not necessarily. I know many great brokers who have done a great job. All right, I think we're heading towards a fee percentage of assets under management, but we see more and more fee schedules now with fixed fees. We see a hybrid fee. Again, it's about full disclosure and what's fair to the client. Okay, we can't bang a square peg in a round hole.
Pershing put out a great study about a year ago, pre-COVID, about the margin for hybrid advisory firms that do have a fee business but also do commission. They're making about 300 basis points more of net profit. And the question is that they're more agile, certain types of products. Do you think that there's a limitation, given the fee-for-service model, on certain types of product structures that really don't make sense to put into a fee account?
Well, obviously, there are certain types of services that a commission person can offer and provide that a fee person can't. A fee-only person is not going to sit down with you about insurance. that's confounded me. And again, I know that my friends that I represent, including the organizations that are fee only, they always look at me cross-eyed when I say that. But clients need insurance. And why wouldn't their trusted advisor be the one to help them with that? All right. So I think that there are certain services and products that, don't fit the fee only model. I'm a big fan of the fee only model. All right. But you have to be concerned that if you're a fee only provider, if you're sending the client out to another investment professional, another professional, insurance, CPA, whatever, whether or not at some point they're going to, try to solicit your clients for them to provide those services. So you've got to be careful there. Again, at the end of the day, all that matters is, did I, as the professional, do the right thing for my client? We all have conflicts, Ryan. Every day we get out of bed, we have conflicts. All right. Did we do the right thing despite the conflicts?
The RAs that we work with, we strongly advocate that insurance isn't just insurance, it's risk management. And if you really are a fiduciary, how do you not insure against catastrophic risks that insurance provides? And I think the RA industry it's moving in that direction. Better products are coming, and strongly advocate people to get smart. And if you don't want to sell the insurance because you don't understand the product mix, we tell people you should probably find a trusted partner to go down that road with that won't compete with your clients. Because to your point, some of the folks that sell insurance also provide wealth management advice, or they sell those leads. And it could be a very uncomfortable conversation with either the client or the heirs. Once insurance is done properly or not done properly, and everybody's Monday likes the Monday morning quarterback when assets transfer, and so it's a very interesting risk, I think, for a lot of clients' books, that if they don't take this seriously, it will hurt them when assets change hands. You talk about doing compliance right. What are your views about the state regulators? What's coming? Who are some of the more difficult states, more aggressive states? Which states are doing it right, the right balance? Any best practices out there that you'd recommend?
Well, the states are generally doing a pretty good job at this point. They've had to do a better job because they now regulate more and more investment advisors. All right. There are some states that I think do a nice job. I think Florida's always done a very good job. Why? Because they're a hotbed of financial exploitation of the elderly. Okay. Arizona, same thing. They've both done a very, very good job there. Do I have issues with state regulators? I have issues with all regulators because you have people regulating the business who really don't understand the business. But I think Florida and Arizona do a good job. My own home state of New Jersey, I think, does a fine job. I mean, again, regulators have a tough job. They have a tough job. And the issue is leadership. And one of those who are leading the organizations understand the big picture rather than getting caught in the minutia.
We all take exams, right? We're licensed to practice financial advice. Why is it that arbitrators, arbitration panels, don't necessarily have to qualify for at least an academic understanding of our business? What can be done about this? Because it seems that there's people who have no concept about some of the financial concepts that are on arbitration panels. And what can be done from either a complaint into the SEC or to FINRA to say we need higher standards? If you're going to have, standards on our licensure, can't we have somebody on the other side of the table that's going to adjudicate, have a certain quality of understanding? And then secondly, there's a lot of arbitrators who have conflict of interest, doing this for political reasons. How do you advise clients that are going up against a panel that may not understand basics of our industry or may not really like our industry and are doing it for political reasons?
Well, Ryan, I'm a big fan of arbitration for various reasons. However, if you're looking at FINRA does vet their arbitrators. And during my early years when I was doing a lot of arbitration, now we do, my partner, Brian Carlos, heads our arbitration group. And, we want to make sure we look at the arbitrators and their bios, CVs, conflicts. and you get to know the good ones, you get to know the ones you don't want, right? So a seasoned lawyer who does this will know the ones to avoid. AAA, you know, I would not engage in a AAA arbitration unless I had at least one industry arbitrator, at least one, and I would probably want a majority of industry arbitrators if we had three. But if it was a solo arbitrator, it's got to be industry. Because if you don't understand our industry, I probably don't want you to arbitrate. And there's a big difference between understanding the FINRA industry and the advisory industry as to the practices, what's okay and what's not okay. So I would look at those things. Now, if you're a securities lawyer, perhaps I would favor that because you understand or pretend to understand. But I think it's all about vetting. Okay, your lawyer, when you bring an arbitration claim or defending, you must vet the arbitrators. You'll get a chance to say yay or nay to the panel, and you got to vet. You got to get someone who knows what they're looking at. And should they be licensed or pass an exam? Probably wouldn't hurt. Although there are those who think that you may want to have a layperson, but that layperson should have some at least general requisite knowledge. I agree with that.
Yeah, no, it strikes me that that'd be a good operating protocol for us to start advocating for with our regulators, just to have, more meaningful conversations. Because, when we get billed by the hour, educating an arbitrator for a few days on esoteric topics such as securities law can get pretty costly. Well, so as it relates to the compliance priorities for firms today, so when you go in to see a new client, what are the top three things that people, think they're, all polished and brushed up, but they maybe sometimes don't think about?
Conflicts of interest, the real disclosure about conflicts of interest, fees, okay, and whether or not they really are ready for an exam. All right. I sit down with so many firms who said, Tom, we're ready. And within an hour, they say, we don't understand any of this stuff, or our consultant didn't tell us. Look, at the end of the day, you need to own your compliance. And if you don't have the right person as chief compliance officer, internally, not outsourced, there's no such thing, internally that understands your compliance, okay, when the SEC comes calling, you're going to have a lot of trouble.
In outsourcing compliance for a lot of RAs and financial advisors, do you have to have a law firm? Is it craziness to go with an outsourced compliance firm that's not a law firm?
Well, you can, outsource. It depends on the tasks, Ryan. Right? When it comes to advice, I'm a lawyer, so everything I do for my clients is privileged, not subject to turnover. So, but if you're talking about routine, and there's a difference between how a lawyer looks at things and a lawyer's ability to understand and read the law, because these are laws, correct? But there are many fine consultants who can do the rudimentary tasks, such as filings, an email review, things like that. There's no reason you can't outsource those with the following caveat. Please beware, right? Because when the SEC comes, they don't want to hear about your consultants. You own that process. And if you don't understand how, when, and why it's done, okay, again, you're going to have a lot of explaining to do.
Yeah, attorney-client and these conversations is often a lifesaver, especially if you're trying to do the right thing, but you don't know if you're on the right path or not.
Ryan, I get so many calls, 2 or 3 a week. Tom, the SEC is here. We've known about you for years. We need you. They want our report that the consultant gave us. Guys, I can't help you. That consultant report is not privileged, and now you get to turn it over to the SEC and to plaintiffs' lawyers. You've got to be so careful about having a compliance review or exam or a mock audit done by a non-lawyer. I think you're really playing with some fire.
Yeah, no doubt. And, the smart firms have the attorneys engage the consultants. But what I would tell you is that, when it comes to like organizations like, say, Piaba, a lot of people don't know who they are. Piaba is the plaintiff's bar. When you look at them and how they're organized, I think a lot of advisors don't realize that it's a very well-oiled machine. What can you share about Piaba to our viewers?
Well, I don't know much about Piaba today, but I can tell you I was one of their initial members years and years and years ago in the 80s. Look, it's a public industry arbitration bar association. They're looking to bring claims against the advisory and the brokerage industry. I would tell you that you have some really good lawyers there. You have some really not so good lawyers there. You better have a really good defense lawyer who understands the business. And I think they're all salivating at this point with markets at these high levels that at some point they're going to have a whole lot of work in front of them.
They have nice houses and drive nice cars. That's a wonder why. But yeah, no, it's a lucrative industry for the plaintiff's attorneys. I think advisors, though, to your point, it's too late once the complaint lands in your email box. You need to get proactive and really spend the time and the money to really build strong defenses and protocols. A record of compliance, an ounce of prevention is, worth much better than a pound of the solution. So as it relates to the future of the wirehouses, we've seen a huge shift in advisor, desire to go independent. We say here, independence is a journey. What are you seeing in terms of the trends? What happened during COVID at the wirehouses? It seems like a lot of people woke up because whether it was, their life expectancy decreased or, spending time at home and out of the home office made them realize they don't need that expensive real estate office. What has changed from the wirehouse mentality of the advisors and the management teams at the wirehouses? I think there's great change afoot in the wealth management space, and you're at the front lines. What are you seeing?
Well, we're seeing more and more looking to leave. The big issue for me, and I was one of those lawyers in the 80s and the early 90s who one week was representing the broker dealers and the other next week was being sued by the broker dealers because we were taking brokers away and they were going from one firm to the next. That pretty much has stopped at this point. Although the protocol for many firms they exited the protocol. I think the big issue is for many who are considering it. Okay. Are they good business people? Can they actually run a business? Just because you have a business doesn't mean you can run a business. And that's the benefit of staying with the wirehouse. But I've never met anybody who's made that move and a year later said, boy, that wasn't a great thing I did. I'm making a whole lot more money. I have a whole lot more freedom. There are plenty of broker dealers, non-wirehouse broker dealers that can assist their non-fee only business, their brokerage business, and so when you have those, there are great independent broker dealers like PKS out there that can assist those brokers. So they don't have to go fee only, but they don't have to conduct business under what they might believe is a very, very harsh regime at the wirehouses.
And it seems like it's getting tougher and tougher. Meanwhile, they're realizing that their economics can be taken away from them at the flip of a switch. As it relates to the individuals that are leaving, you say being a good business person. What I've seen, at least in a limited response, is that a lot of folks go independent. They're very successful. They earn a lot more money. But they still want that camaraderie. They still want that platform feel, knowing that someone's got their back. When you talk to people who are breaking away, the ones that don't leave, what is the reason that they don't leave? And how as an industry should we kind of help them overcome that?
Two issues. One, fear that the regulatory landscape is so aggressive that they're better off staying where they are. Okay. And two, comfort. They become very comfortable and they're at a stage of their lives where it doesn't make sense for them to change. Those are the two general reasons.
Yeah, no, I think fear is a very powerful motivator to stay and keep doing the same thing. I think the economics, I've seen run on different books, can be like 2 to 3 times greater, but you do take a little more risk. We are starting to see more and more advisors that have gone independent 10 plus years look for succession plans. When you talk to your client base, what percentage of them are looking or planning for that Gen 2 advisor to take over their book or selling their book? What do you see coming in from that perspective?
Well, from that standpoint, there's two ways to have succession. And I traveled the country in 2000, 2001, doing M&A conferences for the industry. And we talked about external and internal. Internal is generally, when you're going to hire a junior person and you're going to leverage, and at some point your clients know that you've got a deep bench and you'll stay around for as long as you want. Or external. And we're seeing a whole lot of external today where there are roll-up firms coming in to buy. There's so much money out there. So it depends upon what you want to do. I always say plan for internal. All right. Always plan for internal so your clients don't look at you and say, hey, you got some gray hair. What happens if something happens to you? But you can always consider the external. The multiples right now are pretty scary. And the money out there is pretty aggressive.
Yeah, no, we're at all-time highs in the market. We're at all-time highs on valuations. It seems like it's a very interesting time, definitely a seller's market, if you will. But as it relates to an advisor that needs to find a succession advisor, what are some things that you would advise if I was calling you and saying, hey, I need to retire in 2 years? What should I be looking for in terms of that advisor to take care of my clients that have grown to trust my practice?
Well, generally, hopefully you belong to some organizations. If you're fee only, you belong to perhaps a NAPA, which is a marvelous organization, or you're a CFP or a CFA, and you attend industry events, or you belong to your state organizations. So there's a fraternal group of you who know each other, and then you look at how seamless a transition can be. Do you use the same custodians? Do you conduct the same type of business? It's very hard to combine a fee base with a fee only practice. Those are the things you have to look at, and you don't look at them, when you get sick or when you're ready to retire. This is planning. This is done years in advance. I've done several agreements with firms throughout the country where they have identified them, and they're going to help each other in the event there is an event or mitigating circumstance. But you want to renew those every year because things change, people change, their desires change. So there's a wealth of ways to do it. The issue is about planning and making sure you have the right fit.
My wrestling coach used to say, prior planning prevents piss poor performance. And contacting a compliance consultant like yourself and a lawyer, a law firm, and getting their house in order is just more critical now at the top of the market than ever. And hopefully a lot of advisors that have gone independent, that have gone fee, that have gone hybrid, realize that the good old days are now, and they need to start preparing for what will eventually be a correction. Hopefully they do that in an assertive and thoughtful posture with great consultants like Stark and Stark. So at this point, we go in season 3. We have kind of some questions that we ask at the end of the show for all of our guests. Some are yes or no, provide as much or as little context as you would like. But here we go. So first question, now that a vaccine is available, would you take it or have you taken it?
I've taken vaccine my first shot. I'll get my second shot in 2 weeks. I can tell you proactively, I will no longer be under house arrest anymore. And last Sunday, I made 11 plane reservations. I'll make another 10 or 15 this weekend. And I'm ready to get back on the road. I generally travel 49 weeks a year, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, no doubt. The travel, I think we're going to see a lot of pent-up travel demand here in the next few months. 2021, is it a recession or a recovery year?
I think with all the money that has been pumped into the economy, and as much as I am a bear, I see a continued recovery.
Yep. What was your number one goal for 2021 this year?
Health of my family, health of my friends, and maybe everybody trying to find out why we're this. To concentrate on our similarities rather than our differences.
Yeah, no, your health is your wealth, and I think a lot of advisors are starting to realize that taking an unhealthy lifestyle in this industry is very easy to fall into. And I think COVID has really accelerated that conversation across many firms. So what do you, in the industry, who is a thought leader that you look at that you think people should pay more attention to?
Well, in my industry, my good friend, Bob Veris, I don't know how many people know my good friend Bob, but Bob has always been a top thought leader in the industry, and I just love him. I'll be speaking at his conference in October, but he's definitely a thought leader. And Michael Kitsis, a thought leader. But I've known Bob for so many years, and I've known Michael too. They're very smart people. So those are people you want to listen to. They're always provocative, and those are my two.
Any books that you're reading right now that you'd want to share with our viewers?
You know, I would like to tell you, Ryan, that I'm a book reader, but I never have been. I am so immersed in the financial industry. I listen to podcasts or the radio, and I read a great deal, but books, I've never had time for fiction or nonfiction books. And that is something at some point in my life, if I ever stop doing this, I may take up.
You know, it's interesting. A lot of lawyers I talk to say the same answer because they get paid to read emails or documents for a living, and they're like, I don't want to read anymore. But besides Non-Beta Alpha, what other podcasts are you listening to?
You know, I like to listen to, there's a radio show, believe it or not, called Red Eye Radio. I listen to that a lot at night. I'm not a sleeper, so I listen to a lot of radio and podcasts at night while others should be sleeping.
A lot of coffee. I put coffee in my coffee as well, so I don't sleep much either. Well, you know, Tom, I appreciate you walking us through kind of the compliance environment. And on that note, I'm going to put out the compliance candle. Welcome, seeing you soon, hopefully, and good luck on the travels. Welcome on your jailbreak out of house arrest.
Absolutely. Same to you, Ryan. God bless and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
This show is brought to you by StatusJet. Elevate your status. Fly anywhere, anytime, and experience the difference. Visit statusjet.com to charter your private jet today. Thanks for listening to this episode of Non-Beta Alpha. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube so you never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or simply share this episode with your friends. And now you know.
All price references and market forecasts correspond to the date of this recording. This podcast should not be copied, distributed, published, or reproduced in whole or in part. The information contained in this podcast does not constitute research or recommendation from Non-Beta Alpha Inc., Wentworth Management Services LLC, or any of their affiliates to the listener. Neither Non-Beta Alpha Inc., Wentworth Management Services LLC, nor any of their affiliates make any representation or warranty as to the accuracy or completeness of the statements or any information contained in this podcast, and any liability, therefore including in respect of direct, indirect, or consequential loss or damage is expressly disclaimed. The views expressed in this podcast are not necessarily those of Non-Beta Alpha Inc. or Wentworth Management Services LLC, and Non-Beta Alpha Inc. and Wentworth Management Services LLC are not providing any financial, economic, legal, accounting, or tax advice or recommendations in this podcast. In addition, the receipt of this podcast by any listener is not to be taken as constituting the giving of investment advice by Non-Beta Alpha Inc. or Wentworth Management Services LLC to that listener, nor to constitute such person a client of any affiliate of Non-Beta Alpha Inc. or Wentworth Management Services LLC. This does not constitute an offer to buy or sell any security. Investments in security may not be suitable for all investors. An investment of any security may involve risk and the potential loss of your initial investment. Investors should review all risk factors before investing. Investors should perform their own due diligence before considering any investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Investment products, insurance, and annuity products are not FDIC insured, not bank guaranteed, not insured by a federal government agency, may lose value.